The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was older than human civilization itself. Its walls were made of black stone that seemed to drink the light. 12 massive chairs formed a circle at the center, each one carved for a different species. Some chairs had no backs, others had no seats at all. One was filled with water. Another glowed with gentle heat for a creature that needed fire to think. David Cole stood in the middle of this circle. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had spent 30 years as a diplomat, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. Behind him stood 4 other humans. Kate Morrison was the closest. She wore no uniform, but her straight back and sharp eyes told everyone she was military. The council members watched the humans with expressions that ranged from curiosity to open disgust. These were the rulers of known space. They controlled trade routes that stretched across 10,000 star systems. They decided which species lived and which ones died. And they had never seen creatures quite like humans before. "You may speak," said the head counselor. His name was impossible for human tongues to pronounce, so the translation device called him First Voice. He was a tall, thin being, with blue skin and 4 arms. His people had ruled this council for 6,000 years. David cleared his throat. "Thank you for this opportunity. Humanity comes before you today, not as conquerors, but as neighbors. Our war with the Valdran Empire has ended. We seek no more conflict. We wish only to join the community of civilized species, to trade, to learn, and to share what we know." A sound like laughter came from one of the chairs. Ambassador Torek of the Valdran Empire leaned forward. He was covered in dark scales, and his yellow eyes burned with hatred. The Valdran had attacked Earth 50 years ago, expecting an easy victory. They had found something very different. "Share what you know?" Torek said. "What could primitives possibly teach us? You still count your civilization in mere thousands of years. My people were building starships when yours were hitting rocks together." David did not react to the insult. He had expected this. "We know we are young," he said calmly. "That is why we wish to learn." First Voice raised one of his 4 hands. The chamber fell silent. "The Council has discussed humanity's request," First Voice said. "We have reached a decision. Humanity may join the Galactic Council under the following terms." A holographic display appeared in the air before David. He read the terms, slowly. His face remained still, but Kate saw his hands tighten into fists. The terms were simple. Humanity would reduce its fleet to 100 ships. Council observers would be stationed on Earth to ensure compliance. Human ships would not be allowed to travel without Council permission. Humans would have no vote in Council matters. They would pay tribute to the Council every year, and they would open their borders to any Council species that wished to settle on human worlds. These terms, David said slowly, would make humanity a subject species, not a member. "You misunderstand," said Counselor Veth, a creature that looked like a floating cloud of gas. "These terms are generous. Most new species are simply conquered and absorbed. We are offering you protection." "Protection from whom?" Kate asked. She had not been given permission to speak, and several council members hissed at her rudeness. "From yourselves?" "Primarily," said Torek with a cruel smile. "Your species is violent and unstable. You breed too fast. You adapt too quickly. Left alone, you would spread across the galaxy like a disease. The Council is offering to civilize you." Kate wanted to respond, but David touched her arm gently. "May I ask," David said, "what happens if we refuse these terms?" The Council members exchanged looks. Some of them seemed amused. Others seemed confused, as if the question made no sense to them. "No species refuses the Council," First Voice said. "Those who do not join willingly are brought in by force. Those who resist are eliminated. This is the way of things. This has always been the way of things." David nodded slowly. "I see. Then I must ask for time to consult with my government. Earth must decide this matter together. You have 3 days," First Voice said. "Use them wisely. There will be no second offer." The human delegation was escorted out of the Great Hall by guards who looked at them like they were insects. The walk back to their ship was long and silent. Only when they were aboard and the doors were sealed did Kate finally speak. "They want to put a leash on us," she said. Her voice shook with anger. "They want to turn us into pets." David sat down heavily in a chair. He suddenly looked very old. "I know," he said. "We beat the Valdren," Kate continued. "We fought them for 50 years and we won, and now their friends want to take everything from us without firing a shot." "I know," David said again. "So what do we do?" David was quiet for a long moment. Through the ship's window, he could see the massive station that housed the Galactic Council. It was bigger than some moons. It represented power that humanity could barely imagine. But David had studied history. He knew that great powers fell all the time. He knew that the biggest empires often rotted from within. And he knew something else too. Something the Council had clearly forgotten. Humanity did not survive by being the strongest or the smartest. Humanity survived by being stubborn, by refusing to give up, by finding ways to win when winning seemed impossible. "We go home," David said finally. "We talk to the President. We tell Earth what the Council has offered. And then," David looked at Kate. For the first time since they had arrived, there was something like hope in his eyes. "And then we remind the galaxy why you should never back a human into a corner." 3 days later, the Council waited for humanity's answer. They were certain they knew what it would be. Every species accepted eventually. Fear was a powerful teacher. They did not know that they had just made the worst mistake in their 6,000-year history. They did not know that the humans were already planning. They did not know that everything was about to change, but they would learn. The galaxy would learn. And when the lesson was over, nothing would ever be the same again. The President's office was underground, deep beneath the mountains of Colorado. It was built to survive anything. Nuclear war, asteroid impacts, even the weapons the Valdren had thrown at Earth for 50 years. James Walker had spent more time in this bunker than in the sunlight. The war had stolen most of his life. He was not going to let the peace steal what remained. David Cole stood before a wall of screens. Behind him sat the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the leaders of Earth's united government. Admiral Rachel West sat closest to the President. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. "Tell me again," President Walker said. "Tell me exactly what they offered." 2044, David repeated the Council's terms. When he finished, the room was silent. Then Admiral West began to laugh. It was not a happy sound. "They think we're fools," she said. "They think we'll hand over everything we've built because they asked nicely." "They didn't ask nicely," Kate Morrison said. She stood near the door, still wearing the same clothes from the Council chamber. "They threatened us. They said they would destroy us if we refused." "Can they?" President Walker asked. Admiral West touched a control on the table. New images appeared on the screens. Ships, weapons, technology that looked like nothing Earth had ever built. "For the past 30 years, West said, we've been fighting the Valdren with one hand. With the other hand, we've been building these." The images showed human warships, but not like any the Council had seen. These were sleek and dark, covered in angles that seemed wrong somehow. They looked fast. They looked dangerous. "Jump drives," West continued. "Not the gate system the Council controls. Our ships can travel anywhere, anytime, without asking permission. Our weapons can cut through any shield the Council has ever built. Our armor can survive anything they can throw at us." "How?" David asked. "How did we build all this while fighting a war?" West smiled, and it was a cold smile. "Because we had to. Because we knew this day would come. The Valdren were just the beginning. The Council was always the real threat. We've been preparing for them since the first day of the war." President Walker stood up and walked to the window. There was no view, just concrete. But he stared at it anyway. "How many ships do we have?" he asked. "Enough," West said simply. "If we refuse the Council's terms, they will attack us." Are you telling me we can win? Did. West leaned forward. Mr. President, I'm telling you they can't even hurt us. Their technology is old. They stopped advancing centuries ago because they didn't need to. They controlled everything, so they got lazy. Meanwhile, humanity has been fighting for survival since we climbed down from the trees. We don't know how to stop improving. We don't know how to stop getting better. The room fell silent again. President Walker turned away from the window. Send David back to the council, he said. I want every species to hear what we have to say. 2 days later, David Cole walked back into the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. The 12 members sat in their chairs, looking down at him with the same mixture of contempt and boredom. Ambassador Torek was smiling. He was already planning what he would do to Earth once it was under council control. You have returned, First Voice said. We assume you bring Earth's acceptance. David looked around the chamber slowly. He noticed the recording devices that would broadcast his words across the galaxy. Good. He wanted everyone to hear this. I do not bring acceptance, David said. His voice was calm and clear. I bring a message from the people of Earth. The council members shifted in their chairs. This was not what they expected. Humanity came to this chamber seeking friendship, David continued. We came offering peace. We came hoping to join a community of equals, to learn from you, and to share what we know. Instead, we were offered chains. You were offered protection, First Voice interrupted. You should be grateful. Protection? David shook his head sadly. You offered to take our ships, to place your soldiers on our world, to control where we go and what we do. That is not protection. That is slavery with a different name. Torek laughed loudly. Little human, you have no choice. Accept the council's generosity or be destroyed. It is that simple. David turned to face the Valdran ambassador directly. 50 years ago, your people came to our world. You burned our cities. You killed millions of our people. You thought we would break. We did not break. We fought back. And we won. The smile faded from Torek's face. Humanity does not seek enemies, David said, looking at each council member in turn. We do not want war. We want only to live in peace, to explore the stars, to build a future for our children. But we will not buy peace with our freedom. We will not trade our future for your approval. He paused, letting his words sink in. Earth refuses your terms. We withdraw from these negotiations. We will return to our own space and close our borders. We will speak with you again when you are ready to treat us as equals. First Voice rose from his chair. All 4 of his arms were shaking with anger. You dare refuse the council? No species has ever refused us and survived. David smiled. It was a small smile. But there was something in it that made several council members suddenly uncomfortable. Then we will be the first, David said. He turned and walked out of the chamber. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Behind him, he could hear the council members beginning to shout and argue. But he did not look back. Outside, Kate Morrison was waiting. She fell into step beside him. That was quite a speech, she said. It needed to be said. They'll come after us, you know. They won't let this stand. David nodded. I know. But they'll find that humans are not as easy to break as they think. They boarded their ship and left the station without another word. Behind them, the Galactic Council was already mobilizing. They would punish these arrogant primitives. They would crush them utterly. They did not know that humanity was counting on exactly that reaction. They did not know that every step they were about to take had already been planned for. They did not know that the trap was already set, but they would learn. Soon enough, they would all learn. The months after humanity's refusal were strange and unsettling. The Council expected anger. They expected threats. They expected desperate messages begging for a second chance. Instead, they got nothing. The humans simply disappeared. Earth's borders closed completely. No ships entered or left human space. All communication channels went silent. Trade stopped. Diplomatic links were cut. It was as if humanity had decided to pretend the rest of the galaxy did not exist. At first, the council celebrated. They told themselves the humans were hiding in fear. They said it was only a matter of time before the primitives came crawling back. Ambassador Torek boasted loudly about how the mighty Valdrin had broken the human spirit at last. But as the months passed, the celebration faded. Something was wrong. The silence was too complete, too deliberate. It felt less like fear, and more like preparation. Counselor Mira of the Althean Consortium was the first to grow truly worried. Her species was not a warrior race. They survived by thinking, by planning, by understanding their enemies better than those enemies understood themselves. And what Mira understood about humans frightened her deeply. She spent weeks studying human history. She read about their wars, their famines, their disasters. She learned about the times they had nearly destroyed themselves, and about the times they had rebuilt from almost nothing. She studied the human warriors who had conquered half their world, and the human scientists who had split the atom. She read about their art, their music, their stories. What she found was a pattern. Humans were at their most dangerous when they were quiet, when they were pushed into corners, when everyone else thought they were beaten. They are not hiding, Mira told the council. They are building. Every day we ignore them, they grow stronger. The council laughed at her. First Voice called her concerns foolish. Torek said she was frightened by primitives who could barely travel between stars. They dismissed her warnings and went back to their usual business. But Mira was not the only one paying attention. Strange reports began to arrive from the edges of explored space. Traders spoke of human ships appearing in places they should not be able to reach. These ships did not use the gate network that the council controlled. They simply appeared out of nowhere and vanished just as quickly. On a small mining world far from council territory, a merchant named Voss made contact with human traders. They offered technology he had never seen before. Power cells that lasted 10 times longer than anything on the market. Medical devices that could heal wounds in seconds. Navigation systems that could plot courses through areas of space that were supposed to be impossible to cross. Where does this come from? Voss asked the human trader, a young woman with kind eyes and a sharp smile. Earth, she said simply. We've been busy. The council will be angry if they learn you're trading outside their rules. The woman's smile grew wider. The council can be as angry as they want. They have no power over us. They never did. Word spread quietly. Species that had been ignored by the council for centuries began reaching out to humanity. They were careful. They were secret. But they were hungry for what the humans offered. And humans seemed happy to share. The Galactic Council's grip on trade began to weaken. For the first time in thousands of years, there was competition. There was choice. Species that had always bowed to the council started to wonder if maybe they didn't have to bow anymore. Counselor Mira watched all of this with growing fear. She sent more warnings to the council. She begged them to reach out to humanity, to offer better terms, to find some way to bring the humans back to the table before it was too late. You are worried about nothing? First Voice told her. Humans are primitive. They are isolated. Whatever small advances they have made will mean nothing against the combined power of the council. If they continue to cause trouble, we will simply destroy them. And if you cannot destroy them? Mira asked. First Voice stared at her with his ancient eyes. Every species can be destroyed. It is the first law of the universe. But Mira knew something that First Voice had forgotten. The first law of the universe was not about destruction. It was about survival. And no species in the history of the galaxy had proven better at survival than humanity. 18 months passed. The human silence continued. Their ships appeared more frequently now, always just outside council space, always watching. They never attacked. They never threatened. They simply watched and waited. In the shadows, the human alliance grew. 20 species. 30. 40. All of them bound together by trade, by shared technology, by the simple promise that humans would treat them as equals. The council had spent thousands of years building an empire based on fear. Humanity was building something new based on respect. Counselor Mira made one final attempt to warn the council. She gathered all her research, all her evidence, and presented it to the full assembly. "The humans are not our prey," she said. "They never were. We are theirs. They have been playing a game that we do not understand, and we are losing badly. If we do not change our approach now, everything we have built will fall." The council listened politely, then voted to ignore her recommendations. The humans were primitives. The council was eternal. Nothing would ever change that. 3 days later, the Valdran Empire launched its invasion of the neutral worlds. They expected an easy victory. They expected to show the galaxy that the old powers were still strong. They had no idea what was waiting for them, but they were about to find out. And when the truth finally became clear, when the council finally understood what humanity had become, it would already be far, far too late. The Valdran invasion fleet was the largest military force assembled in 300 years, 2,000 warships, each one carrying enough weapons to burn a planet clean of life. They moved through space like a dark cloud, confident in their power, certain of their victory. Their target was simple: 3 small worlds on the edge of neutral space. These worlds had declared themselves under human protection, which the Council and the Valdran considered a joke. The humans had no presence here. They had no way to defend these worlds. The Valdran would crush them easily and show the galaxy that human promises meant nothing. Admiral Krath stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Burning Claw. He was old even by Valdran standards, and he had spent his entire life fighting. He remembered the war against humanity. He remembered the shame of defeat. Today, he would begin to wash that shame away. "All ships report ready," his second-in-command announced. Krath nodded slowly. "Begin the attack. Leave nothing standing." The Valdran fleet surged forward toward the first planet. Their weapons powered up. Their targeting systems locked onto the surface cities. In moments, millions of innocent people would die. And then the humans arrived. They came out of nowhere. No warning, no signals. One moment, space was empty. The next moment, human warships filled the void between the Valdran fleet and their target. There were only 50 of them, facing 2,000 Valdran vessels. Admiral Krath laughed when he saw them. "Is this all they send? 50 ships to stop the might of the Valdran Empire? They are even more foolish than I thought." But something was wrong. The human ships were not behaving like prey. They were not running or hiding. They simply sat there, waiting, as if they knew something the Valdran did not. Commander Tom Bradley stood on the bridge of the human flagship, the Silent Promise. He was a young man for such a command, but he had earned his place. He had fought in the Valdran War since he was old enough to hold a weapon. He had lost friends, family, his entire home colony. He had every reason to hate the Valdran. But today was not about hate. Today was about sending a message. "Commander," his tactical officer said, "the Valdran are powering weapons." "Let them," Tom replied calmly. "Activate the echo shields." Across the human fleet, a new kind of energy field came to life. It shimmered like water in starlight, surrounding each ship in a bubble of protection that the galaxy had never seen before. The Valdran fired. 2,000 ships unleashed everything they had. Beams of energy, missiles, projectiles moving at fractions of the speed of light. The attack was overwhelming, unstoppable, enough firepower to crack a moon. It hit the human shields and simply vanished. Absorbed. Neutralized. The human ships did not even shake. Silence fell across the Valdran fleet. For the first time in his long life, Admiral Krath felt something he had almost forgotten. "Fear. Return fire," Tom Bradley ordered quietly. The human weapons were new. They did not look like weapons at all. There were no visible beams, no explosions, no dramatic effects. There was only a soft pulse of light from each human ship, barely visible against the stars. And then the Valdran ships began to die. The pulse passed through their shields as if they did not exist. It passed through their armor like it was made of paper. It found their power cores and simply turned them off. One moment, a Valdran warship was a functioning machine of destruction. The next moment, it was a dark, dead hulk drifting through space. Ship after ship fell silent. Hundreds of them. Then 1,000. The Valdran crews were still alive, but their vessels were completely powerless. No weapons. No engines. No communications. Nothing. The entire battle lasted 11 minutes. When it was over, Commander Tom Bradley activated his communication system. His voice was broadcast to every surviving Valdran ship and to every news network in the galaxy. This is Commander Tom Bradley of the Human Alliance Navy. The Valdran invasion has been stopped. Your ships are disabled, but your crews are unharmed. Rescue vessels will arrive within the hour. Your people will be returned to Valdran space safely. He paused, letting his words sink in. We could have killed you all. We chose not to. Remember that. Tell your masters what happened here. Tell them that the people under our protection will remain protected, and tell them that if they ever try this again, we will not be so merciful. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched in stunned silence. They had just witnessed the most powerful military force in 3 centuries destroyed in less time than it took to eat a meal. And the humans had not lost a single ship. They had not suffered a single casualty. The Council received the news within hours. The reports were clear, undeniable, impossible to ignore. Humanity had not just survived their isolation. They had used it. They had leaped forward technologically by what looked like centuries. Their shields could stop anything. Their weapons could disable anything. Their ships could appear anywhere without warning. First Voice read the reports in silence. His 4 hands were trembling, but not with anger this time. With fear. Counselor Mira entered his chamber without being invited. She looked tired, but there was no satisfaction in her eyes. Only sadness. I warned you, she said quietly. I told you what they were. I told you what they would become. First Voice could not meet her gaze. How did this happen? How did primitives surpass us so quickly? Mira sat down across from him. Because you never understood them. You saw a young species and assumed they were weak. You offered them chains and expected them to be grateful. You pushed them away and gave them time to prepare. What do we do now? Mira was quiet for a long moment. Outside, she could see ships gathering. Council ships. But they looked old now. Outdated. Weak. We wait, she finally said, and we hope that humans are more forgiving than we deserve. Because right now, the only thing standing between the Council and destruction is human mercy. She looked at First Voice directly. And mercy, I have learned, is something humans are very good at, when they choose to give it. The question was whether humanity would choose to give it now. And that was something only time would tell. 2 years had passed since humanity walked out of the Council chamber. 2 years of silence, preparation, and quiet revolution. Now, David Cole walked back into the Great Hall, where everything had begun. But this time, everything was different. The chamber looked the same. The black walls still drank the light. The 12 great chairs still formed their ancient circle. But the beings who sat in those chairs were not the same. Their arrogance was gone. Their contempt had turned to fear. They looked at David Cole the way a small animal looks at a predator. David was older now. More gray in his hair, more lines on his face. But his eyes were clear and calm. He walked without hurry, his footsteps echoing in the silence. Behind him came the real surprise. 47 representatives followed David into the chamber. They came from species across the galaxy. Some were tall and thin, others were short and covered in fur. Some floated on cushions of air, others walked on 6 legs or 8. They were different in every way imaginable, but they all wore the same symbol on their clothing, a simple blue circle representing Earth, surrounded by stars. The Human Alliance had arrived. First Voice rose from his chair. He had aged badly in the past 2 years. His blue skin was pale, his forearms thin and weak. The stress of watching his empire crumble had taken its toll. Ambassador Cole, he said, and his voice cracked slightly. We welcome humanity back to the Council. David nodded politely. Thank you. Though I should say that we are not here to rejoin the council. We are here to discuss what comes next. The council members shifted nervously in their seats. They had sent desperate messages to humanity for months, begging for negotiations. They had expected humanity to demand membership, perhaps even leadership. But David's words suggested something else entirely. What do you mean? First voice asked. David smiled slightly. It was not a cruel smile, but there was steel beneath it. 2 years ago, I stood in this chamber and asked for friendship. You offered me chains instead. Today, I stand here again. But this time, humanity is not asking for anything. He gestured to the representatives behind him. The Human Alliance represents 47 species. We control nearly a third of known space. Our technology is generations ahead of anything the Council possesses. Our economy is growing while yours shrinks. Our military could defeat every fleet you have combined without breaking a sweat. The Council members said nothing. They knew all of this was true. We did not come here to destroy you, David continued. We could have done that any time in the past year. We came here because humanity believes in something the Council has forgotten. We believe in second chances. End quote. He pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic document appeared in the air, visible to everyone in the chamber. These are our terms, David said. Full equality for all species in the new galactic order. No more tribute payments. No more forced trade agreements. No more council guards on independent worlds. The gate network will be open to everyone. Species that wish to leave the council may do so freely. First voice read the terms with growing shock. You would dismantle everything we have built. No, David said firmly. We would replace what you have built with something better. Something based on cooperation instead of domination. Partnership instead of fear. Final Damation. BZZZ. 70ZZZ. And if we refuse? David's expression did not change, but his voice grew colder. Then we leave, and the council collapses within a year. Your trade partners are already leaving. Your military allies are already negotiating with us. Without change, you have no future. We are offering you a chance to be part of something new. The chamber fell silent. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Councillor Mira rose from her chair. She walked forward slowly, her gaseous form shimmering in the dim light. She stopped directly in front of David Cole. Ambassador, she said softly. I voted against the terms we offered you 2 years ago. I argued that humanity deserved better. I was ignored. I know, David said. We monitored your communications. We know you tried to warn them. Mira nodded slowly. May I ask you something personal? Oh, of course. What would have happened if we had simply offered you fair terms at the beginning? If we had treated you as equals from the start? David was quiet for a moment. His eyes seemed to look past Mira, past the council, into some future that might have been. We would have been your greatest friends, he said finally. Humanity came here hoping for exactly that. We came hoping to learn from you, to work alongside you, to help build something wonderful together. We came with open hands and open hearts. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was heavy with sadness. You could have had allies who would have stood beside you against any threat, partners who would have shared every discovery, every advance, every triumph. Friends who would have loved you for what you were, not feared you for what you could do. And instead? Mira asked. David shrugged. Instead, you made us enemies. And now you must live with what that means. He turned back to the full council. Humanity does not seek revenge. We do not want to punish you for your mistakes. We want to move forward. We want to build the future we always hoped for. But we will never forget how we were treated. We will never trust blindly again. He held out his hand toward First Voice. This is your last chance. Take it, and we can build something new together. Refuse, and we walk away forever. The choice is yours. The chamber was completely silent. Every eye was on First Voice. His 4 hands trembled as he looked at David's outstretched hand. He looked at his fellow council members, He looked at the 47 Alliance representatives standing proudly behind humanity's ambassador, and slowly, with the weight of 6,000 years of history pressing down on him, First Voice reached out and took David Cole's hand. "We accept your terms," he said quietly. "May we prove worthy of this mercy." David nodded once. "May we all." Outside the council chamber, Kate Morrison was waiting. She had watched the entire negotiation through a live feed. When David emerged, she fell into step beside him. "You did it," she said. "You changed everything." "We did it," David corrected. "Every human who fought, who built, who refused to give up. This belongs to all of us. We wed. This belongs to all of us." They walked in silence for a moment. Through the station windows, they could see ships from 100 different species. Some wore council colors. Others wore Alliance blue. For the first time in galactic history, they were flying together. "What happens now?" Kate asked. David smiled, and this time it was a warm smile, full of genuine hope. "Now we do what humans have always done. We build. We explore. We reach out to the unknown and try to make it a little less unknown. We make friends. We solve problems. We dream." He looked up at the stars, countless points of light stretching into infinity. The galaxy thought they understood humanity. They were wrong. They saw us as primitives to be conquered, as threats to be contained. They never understood what we really are. "And what is that?" David Cole, ambassador of Earth, champion of the Human Alliance, builder of a new galactic future, turned to face Kate Morrison with stars reflected in his eyes. "We are the species that never gives up, that never stops trying, that reaches for the impossible and somehow makes it real. We are dreamers and fighters and stubborn fools who refuse to accept limits that others set for us." He laughed softly. "We are human. And this galaxy has no idea what that truly means. But they're about to find out, and I think they're going to like what they discover." The future stretched out before them, bright and limitless and full of possibility. And for the first time in a very long time, humanity was exactly where it belonged. Among the stars, among friends, among equals, home at last.